Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Saint Damon Martin.
And I'm your passenger. Little
I,
shout out there to the Deftones slash what's his
uh,
name from Tool? Maynard from Tool.
Maynard James Keenan. Yes. By the way, I love that song. I'm not
Great song.
not a big Deftones fan. Let me just lose half our audience right now. I'm not a big Deftones guy.
I like the Deftones from that early era right up to White Pony. Everything
Yeah,
after that's kind of hit and miss. Like they'll have a song I like, but
yeah.
like they won't have a whole album I'll like. But yeah, that
Ar-
that early or the early shit to White Pony.
Around the Fur and White Pony are the two that I really like, and I actually own White Pony on vinyl almost surely because of the Passengers. I love that song, and also shout out to Iggy Pop for The Passenger. That song's also incredible, which they actually play a bastardized version of that in this movie.
I want to talk about that.
Yes, Patrick. Tonight we're going to talk about like a lot about this movie, what happened here, because it weirdly started getting some buzz. But yes, tonight, Patrick, we're talking about Andre Overdahl's latest film, Passenger.
Yes, Damon. Passenger released in May of 2026, starring the likes of Joseph Lloyd Lopez as the passenger, Jacob Scipio as Tyler, Lou Yobel as Maddie, and Melissa Leo as Diana, written by T.W. Burgess and Zachary Donahue, directed by Andre Overdahl. Passenger is the story of a young couple who witnesses a gruesome highway accident, but they soon realize they did not leave the crash scene alone, as a demonic presence called the Passenger won't stop until it claims them both. Damon, we've been talking a lot lately about buzzy horror films. This one, I think it's not, I wouldn't call it one of the big buzzy horror films of the year. Like it wasn't highly anticipated or on anybody's radar, but a little trailer that not got out, but was put out, just took the internet by storm. And people were like, this trailer's fucking cool. I really want to see what this is all about. It doesn't hurt that Andre Overdahl puts his name on it. Autopsy of Jane Doe is a great movie. I like scary stories to tell in the dark. I think we do that early on the podcast. I
It
think
was
we did.
one of our very early episodes. We sure did. Yep.
Great, by the way, a great little like anthology movie that he directs all the thing. And is Jacob Elordi in that one? I can't
I
remember.
don't remember.
No, he's not. That's the other one. Anyway, point is Andre Overdahl, a great trailer. People are like, I'm in. Let's do it. And you know me, Damon, I managed to avoid that trailer like the plague. I watched it tonight before the podcast. I was like, oh, I see why people are got super excited about seeing this movie. There was a vibe, Damon, in that trailer. A simple trailer in my opinion, doesn't really give a lot away about the movie. But yeah, it got audiences really excited, and we're here to determine if the movie lived up to the hype.
Well, I'll say this because I saw the trailer in theaters. I can't remember one of the 9 million movies I've seen over the last 6 months, and I'd never heard of it before. I'd never heard of this movie, and the trailer. And if you're out there, like, and when I describe the trailer, you're not really missing anything, or you're not really learning anything. But literally, the trailer just starts out with two guys driving up the road, and the one guy is like, I need to pee. And he pulls over on the side of the road. His buddy jumps down the hill and he's peeing on the side of the road. And then he hears this loud honking. He's like, dude, hold on, I'm coming. He jumps back up there, and the car is, doors are open, the horns blaring, and there's this giant scratch mark on the back of the trunk, and his friend is gone. And he gets in the car and he's like, what's going on here? And he, shuts everything down and, like, he's looking out, and then boom, his friend comes crashing through the front window, and he's like, oh my God. And his friend just gets dragged away. And so he starts driving up the road, and he starts seeing this weird, creepy figure on the side of the road. And he's like, what the fuck? And he drives by, that same figure. Drives a little further, same figure. And then the very end of the trailer is he turns, and there's a creepy looking dead person basically next to him. It's like, and then boom, Passenger. I saw that trailer, and like I said, I obviously very familiar with Andre Overdahl, but I had never heard of this film. It had no inkling it was coming. So, like, a lot of times when there's trailers, when I first understand what they are, I pull the Patrick Gere, I put my head down and don't watch it. But this one, I didn't even know it was a horror movie at first. Like, I was like, I didn't know what this was. Because, like, a lot of horror movies, they'll play, like, comedy trailers. They won't just play exclusively horror trailers. So when this one came on, I was like, I don't know what this is. And then when it got done, obviously I figured out it was a horror trailer, but I still had no idea what it was. And when, Passenger, I was like, okay, cool. I've never even heard of this before. But you got me. They made an incredibly effective trailer. Now, we've talked about trailers being both good and evil, for lack of a better description, because really good trailers can just get you, and I'm talking about, when I say a really good trailer, I mean a trailer that just gives you a hint of what you're getting into without giving away too much. So not a Marvel trailer, because Marvel just shows you the entire goddamn movie, or DC for that matter. But a good trailer gives you a tease of what you're getting into without giving away too much. And I understand to a certain extent they're going to show you who's in the movie, like stars. If it's a Brad Pitt movie, of course you want to put Brad Pitt right front and center. This was, honestly, this was one of the best trailers I had seen, because it didn't really tell you anything. But it gave you a hint that this is going to be a good, scary movie. And that was, honestly, that might be I'm not kidding when I said it might be one of the best trailers of the year. Because it didn't tell you anything. It just gave you a hint these guys are on a road trip and the one guy gets taken and you're just freaking out, and boom, you get this thing in your face. Even a jump scare in a trailer, which is not that normal. So it had me. I saw that trailer, like I said, 3-4 months ago. I was like, I'm in. This looks pretty cool. I have no idea what it is, but that trailer got me. Patrick, I'm here to tell you, after watching Passenger tonight, the trailer is the best part of this movie.
Well, by the way, there is another trailer, like a late trailer, I think, a final trailer or whatever, that does lay out pretty much the whole movie. Don't watch that trailer. It's whatever, if you go on YouTube to look it up or whatever, it's the newest one. Don't watch that one if you haven't seen the movie. Watch the one that Damon and I are referring to, which is from a few months back. The one that's out right now actually just lays out the movie kind of beat for beat. And, you really understand what the whole movie's going to be about at that point. Yeah, Damon, look, we've had a few bangers back to back. I mean, we've had like Hokum, Obsession, and even movies that you and I love that nobody watched, like The Bride, stuff like that, where you're just like, holy shit, what a great movie this is. What an amazing movie. I'm not here to tell you Passenger's a bad movie. I'm here to tell you that Passenger's kind of a basic horror movie. That's not an indignation. That's not a condemnation. I'm not saying well, don't go see Passenger now. And we would never say that on this show. We always tell you, go see for yourself. I would encourage, and I heard our buddy Chuck talk about it, and I really related to what he was saying. He was in a movie theater with about 3 people. So was I. By the way, I'm pretty sure in my theater were the grandparents of the guy who crashes through the windshield. Anytime they said his name, those 2 old, very elderly people would go, Daniel, Daniel, and they were taking photos of the screen. So I'm like 99.9% sure I was there with his grandparents. So they were very excited, obviously, but it was like them and like 2 people behind me and 1 guy in front of me. That was it. And Chuck also was in a pretty empty theater, and he was like, there are really solid scares in this movie. It's a very standard by the book horror movie, and if you see it in a crowded theater, you're going to get it's going to be a lot more fun. In an empty theater where you can't feel if anybody's reacting to anything, I don't think it's going to hit the same, but it is, to me, Damon, like a pretty, I don't know, standard fare horror movie. There are problems with this movie. I don't see it on my best of list at the end of the year. I really don't. And we'll get into a lot of that stuff in spoilers, but without spoiling anything, I will say that this premise, Damon, is and it's not the lore part, the idea of what is the ghost on the road. That part's fine. It's everything that's wrapped around is not the most interesting movie I've ever seen. It doesn't have. I'd like you to say what you said to me right before we got on the air, because I think it's really accurate to what this kind of horror movie is.
I want to contradict you a little bit, though. You said it's not a bad movie. It's not a good movie, though. It's not. It's pretty.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's not. I'm just saying, like, there is potential for this to be a fun night at the movies, not in an empty theater. It's just not. It's not going to hit that way.
My theater was packed.
Oh, really? Yours was packed.
I went to an 8 p.m. showing, and apparently everyone was on Thorazine or something, because nobody was jumping and screaming or whatever. So I was in a packed theater, and it didn't get them. But what I said to you before we started recording, Patrick, is this feels like one of those bad early 2000s horror movies. You know, when horror movies like made their comeback in the mid 90s when Scream came out, and everyone tried to be like the teen horror film. And there were a lot of good ones, you know, The Faculty, Disturbing Behavior, Joyride. I love that one. That's early 2000s. But like, you know, you get the good looking teens and you get a scary movie on top of that. And they made a lot of good ones. Now, to that point, though, they also made a lot of bad ones. And to me, Passenger kind of feels like one of those movies that if you saw it in 2001 when you were, however old we were, 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever, you'd be like, yeah, it was kind of fun. Like, it was kind of fun. You know, it got me jump scare a couple times. And then you watch it years later when you're in your 40s, you'd be like, yeah, I had nostalgia for it. Like, I remember when, you know, in those days, it would have been like, you know, Tara Reid or, I don't know, like Mina Suvari who's in it. You know, you'd be like, oh, it was great. Or Jason Biggs, whatever. And you'd be like, oh, man, I remember that movie. And you'd watch it again. You'd be like, yeah, you know, it's not a great movie, but it kind of brings me back to my teenage years. That's what you would say about a movie like this. But we are now in 2026, and you and I are in our 40s, and we're watching this fresh for the first time. This felt like a bad early 2000s movie. And when I say bad early 2000s movie, I'm not saying it in a complimentary way, Patrick. I'm really not. I'm not saying like, oh, yeah, like, but it felt like that because it was paced like that. And the plot was just so convoluted in moments and so convenient. There were so many conveniences. Here's how I would best describe this movie, and I'm assuming maybe the writing process or whatever. And I'm not saying this can't be done. I'm just saying they didn't do it in Passenger. It felt like they had the idea of a car crash or a car situation. The trailer. A guy gets pulled out of his car, his friend gets away, and there's like the creature on the side of the road. They had the opening scene, which credit, like they had the opening, they had the trailer in their head. And to their credit, it was pretty amazing. The trailer was amazing. I can't compliment it enough. But then they built around it. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have a plot. They didn't have a story. They had a scene. And the scene was great. Let me be clear about that. The scene was great. But they didn't really know where they were going. And they're like, well, we have a creature. All right. Let's start building some mythology. And they pepper out the mythology in this movie in such a weird, convenient way. And by the time you get to the end, you're like, are you kidding? Is this really where we went with this? Is this really where we're going with this? I'm okay with you giving me mythology that's kind of, I don't know, I won't say stupid, but like, all right, let's just go with that. But then a lot of movies that do that, they give you a twist, or they give you like, oh, we weren't right about this, we weren't right about who's the killer or whatever it is. And it, you can kind of juxtapose it and switch and drop you on your head. This movie does none of that. Like, it just kind of like, you learn a little bit, and then you learn a little bit more, and then by the end, you're like, oh, here's a big dump of information that's just conveniently handed to you right when you need it. And that's the way this movie felt to me, Patrick. They had a great idea. They had a great scene. Now we have to build around that scene. Like I said, I'm not saying it can't be done. Great filmmakers can make, they can make what is the Brock Lesnar? They can make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Like, they can do it. But I'm here to tell you, Patrick, that's what it felt like to me. They had a great idea for a scene. They did not have a great idea for a movie.
I'm willing to agree with that. The only pushback I would say is that I think what I would say this is tough to not, because I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody. I'm just saying I think Andre Overdahl brought his experience to the table, and his experience gave you good stuff. The problem is the story that was written and for some reason not rewritten or trimmed or whatever. I don't want to get into that pre-spoilers, what I think the story needed. The story was still a work in progress, and they went to go shoot the movie instead. And I think they should have honed the story a little bit better. We talked about lore with both Hokum and with Obsession recently. And some of our patrons, actually, patreon.com/Rewind to Living Dead, in case you're curious, They one of them talked about how they didn't like that you didn't really know what was going on with the One Wish Willow in Obsession. And I was like, I didn't really need to know more. I liked what I liked. And they were like, I really wanted to know more. This is what happens when you know too much about the lore. Passenger is what happens when the lore gets too detailed. Maybe some people like that, but I promise you the way they do it in this story is very unsatisfying. I also heard Oriana, a friend of ours, who I would love to have on the show one day. She didn't like Hokum, Damon. Well, I mean, me and Damon were in here drooling all over the floor at how much we loved Hokum. And she just went, I really wanted to know more about the blank. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't heard Hokum. She wanted to go deeper into that lore. And I was like, but do you? Like, do you really? Like some people, and I hear this so much. It's not just these two movies. I'm not just picking on these movies. I hear it a lot where people go, I want to know more about that thing. How come you didn't tell me more about that? This is a perfect example of what happens when you talk too much about lore. It gets into the weeds, or worse, it gets repetitive and boring and like overly convenient. That then it gets to the point where it's like you're talking so much about the lore that you're telling people how the movie will concede itself, like how it will fix itself. The solutions are in all the dialogue, and you're just like, it gets exhausting. It really does. And so to those people that are like, yeah, I want to know more about the thing, watch Passenger and tell me that you didn't want less.
You know, two thoughts, and I mentioned about how like the trailer was so good in that opening scene, that scene that I'm guessing that's where they based the movie upon, which was in the trailer. This felt like a movie that would have been a great short because they executed some of the scares really well, and I know that's
Yes,
I know
that's Andre Overdahl. Yeah.
Yeah, if this would have been a 10 or 15 minute short, I think it would have been really cool because then you're not even really you're not even concerning yourself with the mythology. You're not even concerning yourself with like the lore. You're just getting us like deep down into the scares of being on the road and some weird shit starts happening to you. And as a guy who has done a million road trips, I drove everywhere. When you're in the Midwest, when you're in Ohio, yes, you can fly a lot of places, but the cool thing about being where I'm at, I'm 5 hours from Chicago, I'm 3 hours from Pittsburgh, I'm 3 hours from Detroit, I'm 4 hours from Louisville. I drive a lot. I've driven to Philadelphia, which is much further. It's like 8 hours, but I've driven to New York City. I've driven a lot. I've driven to Houston, Texas, a 17-hour road trip.
Oh
I've
God.
done a lot of driving. And there definitely is some weird, creepy shit that can happen when you're on road trips. So I understand that. So, like, immediately I was kind of hooked on that idea, like the road trip idea, like weird shit happening on the road. But that felt like what this movie should have been. It should have been a short. And I think it would have been a really cool, effective short. But you're not going to get paid for a short. You're not going to make a feature film. You know, you're not going to get people to pay $15 to the movie theater to go to the movie theater and see a 15-minute movie. The other thing, when you talk about the lore and the mythology, when you say like this is what you get, you're right. And the problem with this movie is they give you a lot of information, and the more information they give you, the dumber it sounds.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I want to get into that, but it's such a spoilery thing. Like, I don't want to get too in the weeds with it here. But you've got to show and not tell. Every time I watched something go down, not watched, heard, because it was the big dumps of dialogue, I go, you should have told me half of that, and the other half you should have shown me.
Yeah, and if you want, and listen, I'm not going to defend the movie because the director is an utter piece of dog shit. But if you want to know a movie that pulls off this concept, similar-ish concept, and does it in a way that just gives you enough scares and without getting too deep into the mythology and the lore, Jeepers Creepers, the one with Justin Long, the original one. Hour and 22-minute movie. It's a sprint, not a marathon. Now, by the way, the runtime on this one's an hour and a half, so it's not like this one like dragged on for 2 hours. This was like an hour and 34-minute runtime, so I'm not insulting that. But Jeepers Creepers is a very beloved horror film, even though, as I said, the director's an utter piece of dog shit. But that movie's an hour and 22 minutes. It's lean, it's scary, it's effective, and you just kind of get into it. And while we do learn a little bit about the mythology and lore in that movie, not too much, it's just adrenaline pumping fear from when you get to that moment, and then it's the brother and sister on the run. That's what Passenger would have benefited from. And I don't mind that you give me mythology. I don't mind that you give me lore, but you got to do two things with that. One, it's got to make sense. And this one just like when they finally revealed what the Passenger is, which was very late in the movie, I was like, really? That's what we're doing? That's the answer? That's the cause behind all this? I was like, dear God. And then you got to give us information that makes sense, but you also like give it in a way that isn't too much. And every piece of information in this movie comes at like the most convenient time, and it was just too much. Like I would almost rather it had been a practical movie without any supernatural element. There's just a fucking hitchhiker on the side of the road killing people like the Hitcher. Like where's
You're right.
Where's Rutger Hauer when you need him? But yeah, I just like the more time I spent with this movie, the less I liked it. Like there's about a half-hour span at the beginning where I was like, okay, you're kind of getting me here. I'm kind of into what you're doing. I'm kind of seeing where you're going. And then it just careens off the rails. Like they just decide, okay, we got to tell you about this. We got to explain this. Oh, look, you just conveniently found an answer you had no idea you needed, but right there it is. And you have the I know the half man who helps you. The half man is in this movie in a big way.
Oh my!
And not in a good way. I'm sorry to tell you, but that's like it's just like this was almost felt like a color by numbers of a 2000s horror film. And by the way, there are a lot of good 2000s horror films. I love early 2000s. I've openly said that like late 90s to early 2000s, I do love a lot of films from that period. This one felt like they watched those movies and they're like, let's make one of our own. And then they color copied it and they color copied it again. They copied it again. Then they couldn't even read the lines anymore. Like, fuck it. Let's just try it. Let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And by the end of this movie, when it got to the big conclusion, which we'll talk about the ending when we get into spoilers, I was just like, good God. Like, did anyone read this and say, like, this is just a really bad idea? Like, let's just not go here. Like, let's just, like, it just felt so slapped together. And I'm convinced this was either based on the trailer or it was based on this being a short film. And by the way, you and I have both written short films. And yes, you can turn a short film into a feature film. You can expand upon an idea and make it into a feature film. But sometimes it's better left to be a short film. It's better to be a 10-minute project and just leave it at that. That's what, I mean, I know I've said that before, but that's really what Pastor felt like to me.
It really does. And look, I've made two short films in recent history. One of them still on the festival circuit currently, The Path. And I have written a feature version of The Path. I have a feature version sitting in the proverbial drawer, if you will, and it's too expensive to make the feature version. It's a lot more than what was in the short. And so I'm just like, I'll just sit there. And if one day somebody's like, hey, can we make a feature version of that? I go, here it is. Yeah, like $16 million. That's what we're going to need to make it. Like it's too big. But yeah, sometimes the short is just a short and it works as a short. Even, was it Obsession? I think it was Obsession. They came to Curry Barker because of his short film, The Chair, which if you haven't seen is kind of a well-known and well spread out. You can see it on YouTube. It's a horror film and that caught him some attention on top of his YouTube channel that he already had. And they went, hey, we like The Chair. Do you want to make The Chair? And he was like, actually, I have this other thing. Because even Curry, who Curry is now the man of the hour, he understood like, that was good. I don't really have an idea for that fully, but I have a full idea for this thing called Obsession, which is now going to be the smash hit of the year. I mean, probably one of the more not just horror, but mainstream movies that will break out this year and be one of the big movies of the year. It was a situation like that. The short doesn't always have to become the feature.
Yeah. Patrick, I think we got to get into some spoilers here because we're kind of dancing around a lot of stuff. Passengers is in theaters right now. Listen, as we always say, we never ever tell you not to see a film. Go see it in theaters, judge for yourself. But I gotta be honest, like, this just didn't work for me. Like I didn't hate it. It wasn't like I walked out. Like there's movies like when I saw oh god, what was it last year? The Osgood Perkins one. Oh, Keeper.
Oh yes, he was
Yeah.
very upset about Keeper, folks.
When I saw Keeper, I wanted to punch the theater when I was done. Like I wanted to somehow make a physical manifestation of a theater and just punch it repeatedly, or find Osgood Perkins and just full on, knock him the fuck out. I want to put him. I want to grab him in Anderson Silva Muay Thai clinch, just knee his fucking head off. It's not that. It's not that. But it's just like I'm not even saying like a lot of times we'll say there's bones of a good movie. I'm not saying there's bones of a good movie. There's bones of a good short, and there's bones of a couple good scenes.
I'll say this: there's a 2000s horror movie here.
Yeah, and weirdly, like when I think, like I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking about. The movie Venom. Do you remember the movie Venom had?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not a good movie, but I still enjoy it. Why do I still enjoy it? Because I saw it when I was 19 years old or whenever it first came out, and there's a little nostalgia. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you until it's a good movie. I'm going to tell you it's a bad movie, but I enjoy it because it reminds me of my teenage horror years. If you see this at 19 or 20, you're probably going to be like, oh, it was fun, kind of scary, and you see it 20 years later, there's a nostalgia factor there. That's kind of what this feels like. If you saw it in 1999 or 2000, 2001, you'd probably be like, yeah, it's not a good movie, but I enjoyed it. That's how I would describe this film if I saw it back then. But I didn't see it back then. I saw it now. And horror movies have gone so far beyond that. I'm not saying those aren't great movies. They're really good movies from that era. I mentioned Joyride, one of my favorites.
The Crazies, that's a great 2000s one.
And that's a remake. And here's some blasphemy. I think it's better than the George Romero one. I love George Romero, but I think it's a better film.
I agree.
But this one just felt like that. So yeah, I'm not here to tell you it's the worst thing. I'm not telling you it's Keeper. I'm not telling you it's Osgood Perkins. Fuck that guy. Or David Gordon Green. Fuck that guy too. But it's just not good. It's just not a good movie. With that being said, Patrick, patreon.com/Rewind Living Dead if you want early access to this episode or any episode. Plus, we just dropped our Film Core podcast for May. We reviewed Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Talk about a diametric opposition of that movie.
Big difference there.
Yes, we reviewed Star Wars. We were doing May the 4th Be With You month. Thanks to your brother Schwenk. Gave us that suggestion. So we are doing, we did Star Wars month and our patrons voted on it. We did Rogue One, a Star Wars story. That is already uploaded. You can listen to that right now. You can listen to all of our past Film Core podcasts, all of our other podcasts, plus some bonus episodes. We do TV reviews. We did It Welcome to Derry. We did Alien Earth. We did an Oscars reaction. So all kinds of cool shit. You get access at $5 a month, cost next to nothing. Support your guys. Patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. And Patrick, we are now going full spoilers. So if you haven't seen Passenger, be forewarned, we are now going full spoilers. So the story in this one, Patrick, is basically a girlfriend and boyfriend are moving out of their apartment in Brooklyn. They're going to live a van life. Now let me ask you this, before we get too deep in the plot here. Do you know anyone who lives a van life?
I actually do know a lot of van life people because I worked for a long time in off-road racing, and a lot of people live out of their vans in off-road racing. It's just a thing. Damon, the true horror of this movie is learning what van life is actually like. But that's not connected to the actual horror of the movie. I'm being facetious. It's van life sucks. What I'll tell you about van life is this. You are functionally homeless when you live a van life. Like it's you see a lot of van life influencers on Instagram and stuff like that, and you go, wow, what a romantic life where you kind of travel to these beautiful locations and you're taking awesome pictures and walking on the beach all day. I want to do that for my life. You make a pretty I would say modest living, even as a van life influencer. You're hoping to get sponsorships for free shit instead of spending money on stuff, and you're probably hustling as either a blogger or a photographer, and you're desperately trying to make that money through that. It's a hustle the whole time. And from people I know that live a van life, you are functionally homeless, and these people, we meet them. They're moving out of Brooklyn. They're going to go live their van life. Tyler, he's super excited about being on the road. And Maddie, she's like, oh yeah, this will be cool, I guess. 6 weeks later, she wants to fucking kill this guy. You could see it in her eyes. Bless Lou Yobel for.
I don't know if she wanted to kill him or she just wanted to kill the experience. I don't know if she wanted to kill him as much as she's just like, I don't really like living in a
She was
fucking
hiding
van
it behind
anymore.
those eyes, Damon. I know when a woman is like, I'll fucking strangle this guy in his sleep. But she's miserable. She just is. She doesn't like it. She wants to go back to her old life because it's like they don't got hot water. You know, they're gonna treat themselves by staying in a shitty motel one night. And you're just, and you know, they're getting kicked out of neighborhoods for trying to sleep there and shit like that. They're not having a good time, or
Well, hold
she's
on.
not.
She's not. He's
Tyler loves it. Tyler has found his calling. He is a van life guy. He loves it, and she's in the background just going, oh, "Fuck, this fucking sucks."
And I know, see, I actually know my old editor at my old job was turned into a van lifer, him and his wife. But here's the difference. They kept their home. They had a home in Colorado, and their
Mm-hmm.
18, 19-year-old son stayed at home and took care of the house while they went on van life. And they were driving through whatever, and they came to Ohio where I was lived, and we met up with them, and I saw their van life. It was more of an RV than a van, but
That's
similar-ish,
different.
yeah.
That's
But
different.
it wasn't like a giant, like a grand RV or anything. Like
Sure.
I went on my buddy Jamie Jasta, the singer of Hatebreed. We
Yeah.
did his podcast and we did it on the Hatebreed tour bus, and I was like, I could live on this tour bus. Like it was a pretty
Yeah.
badass tour bus.
I've been on
Yeah,
Nellie's tour bus. It's Nellie's tour bus was 2 stories.
yeah, well, that wasn't that, but yeah, I went on the Hatebreed tour bus. I was like, this is pretty freaking nice. Like this is pretty cool. They had everything in there, big screen TVs and everything. But that was, that's a different story. But my friend's van, or I keep calling it, I want to say van life because that's what this movie is. But it wasn't bad, and he worked for a website, which is what I worked for, and he just worked remotely. He had Wi-Fi, and he worked, and so he still made a normal living. And his wife was a teacher, and so she had saved up money, and she was able to, I think she helped with like online courses or something. So like they were still
Sure.
making money. They had jobs, like real jobs, and they loved it. They were just traveling the country. They were literally doing like a giant, circle around the U.S., going up and down, just seeing everywhere. They loved it. When they stopped here in Ohio, they were like the happiest people ever, and good for them. Like totally good for them. I know people who do it. They loved it. But when I went inside their van, I was like, they showed me all the conveniences. I'm 6'3". There's no van that's going to be comfortable for me. It's just not going to happen. I'm like hitting my fucking head on things. I'm like, where the fuck do I stand in here? So it's not for me, but it is for some people. But yeah, so they start this van life, and Tyler is loving it. They go to like this van life meetup wherever they're at. They never get specific on places, by the way, which I kind of
Yeah.
appreciate. They don't get too deep in the woods on like we're in Orlando.
They seem to be somewhere in the West.
Yeah, but
To me, it's wet. They're west of the Rockies.
well,
It seems that way.
they do go to Flagstaff, which is in Arizona. So they do mention that at one point. So they're in the West, but they never get too deep in the woods on where they're at. But at one point, they stop at like a van life meetup, and there's a van life influencer, and Tyler's like geeking out. I watch all your videos. You're my hero, and you can tell that his girl Maddie's just like, yeah, this is fucking weird. Like I'm not into this at all. But she's trying to put on a happy face for her boyfriend because he is in hog heaven, man. He is loving this. And early in the movie, they're driving along the road, and this car comes speeding up past them, almost running them off the road. And then, like, the car eventually drives past them, goes screeching up the road, and then, whatever, mile or two up the road, they see the car is pulled up the side of the road and hit a tree. And it's the same car. And they're like, what the fuck? So Maddie's driving at that point. She pulls over. She's like, oh, we got to help. We got to help. They get out of the car, and there's a guy, like, hanging out of the car, and you realize it's the guy from the beginning of the movie, from the trailer, who his friend got thrown through the window. He took off, and then the passenger was in the car with him, and we don't see him again. That's just a flash, like, oh my God, and then boom, opening credits, and we get to the actual movie. They go up to the car, and he's like hanging out the side of the car all bloody, and then boom, something pulls him back in the car. You don't see what it is, but he gets dragged back in the car. Like, oh my God. And so Tyler goes to investigate. He looks in there, and it's just a guy. Nothing's in there with him. It's just a guy. But Maddie notices these giant scratch marks on the back of the car, and then weird shit happens. They call the cops, and they get out of there, and that's pretty much the end of that. But then they see they have a scratch on their van, the same
Same
scratch.
3 scratch marks.
Yeah, and so they go to this van life thing, and like I said, Tyler's fucking happy as ever, man. He is so happy. And Maddie's just like, yeah, these people are fucking weird and whatever. And while she's standing there looking at this,
I'm with
like,
Maddie, by the way. Van life meetups. Do your thing. If you like your thing, do your thing. Cuz like trees, do your thing. I was like, get me out of here. This place, the music sucks. People smell. I'm not interested.
but here's where the problems start. And I'm not saying there aren't other problems, but here's where the problems start. Maddie's just looking like someone has like a little store set up outside their van, probably selling trinkets to, continue to put gas in their house, for lack of a better word.
Totally.
And this other weird woman, played by Melissa Leo, who's a very well-known actor, comes up and she just starts like striking up a conversation. And out of nowhere, she's just like, now, whatever you do, don't fall
Well, it's
asleep.
not out of nowhere because convenience is a problem in this movie. Conveniently, Maddie walks up to a bulletin board of missing people. Now, thematically, that makes a lot of sense. If you live the van life, eventually some people go missing. Sadly, it's a lot of those people they kind of end up taking their own lives because after a while, living like that on the road can get to certain people, and they go too far in another direction and stuff like that. But in the story of this movie, it's like she's like, oh my God, there's so many missing people from the van life world. And then she's messing with the pictures and she sees a really crude drawing of a person with 3 slashes across them. And she's like, oh my God, that's like the 3 slashes on our van. And that's when Diana comes into play.
Yeah, and she's basically, it's a warning. It's a warning, whatever. We know the signs. If you're on the road, you know the signs. And then she's like, whatever you do, don't drive at night and don't stop for anybody. And it's just like very like,
it's
too convenient.
It's cryptic.
It's cryptic, but way too convenient. Like, like I've been on enough road trips where people tell you like, don't get off at an exit or don't stop in this town or those kind of things. But like, she was so specific, like, don't drive at night, which is kind of hard to do when you're driving a freaking van for a living, but whatever. And she's like, don't stop for anybody. I'm like, all right. And just literally describing to Maddie what happened to them the night before.
Yeah.
Literally, don't drive at night, which is when they were driving, and don't stop for anybody, which is literally what they did. She's literally describing to her not to do what exactly happened 24 hours ago. And I'm like, really? That's awfully convenient. You would literally be telling her not to do what she just did.
You mentioned Half Man, and for the uninitiated who haven't been with us since day one, I'll do a quick refresher. The Half Man in horror is a very common character, very common archetype, and it's a person who has experienced the horror that you are now experiencing, and they have experience of their own to help you along the journey. Basically, they function as an exposition dump. They're there to tell you why the monster is so treacherous or what the lore is that you need to do. Diana's a half man. She knows something.
A much better example of a half man that actually works is like Bloodworth from Final Destination, the great Tony Todd. Like, that is a half man that gives you just enough information to kind of keep you on the track, keep you on path where you need to go. Now, there's the other half man, which is literally just an exposition dub where they're like, hold on, let me get out my fucking guidebook to tell you exactly what you need to know about this villain. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to mention.
No,
people don't like that. That's a good half man. This is not.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples of good and bad half men, but it's a very common staple in horror. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. We got a half man here. That's no problem. I would not have had a problem with this scene because it is a very convenient scene. What have I always said about convenience, Damon? You get one. You give me a good convenience in your movie, one is fine. Once you go beyond that, we've got problems because now you are relying on conveniences to get your characters through the story, and that doesn't work. And unfortunately, this movie does suffer from that. If this scene alone had been that scene, we'd be okay because even the setup, like, of course, it makes sense that an older woman would have a shop that she's selling stuff, and she would also have, she's clearly somebody who's very empathetic, and so she puts up missing signs for people that are still missing. All this makes sense, and even Diana coming up to Maddie and being like, "You're new to this, aren't you? I can tell." It's totally clear. Everything about this setup is fine. It's that this keeps happening all the way down the road. Maddie later on is in a bookstore, a random bookstore, and she finds
it's a random junk store, really. Like, it's just a junk store, like random shit. And she just happens to find a stack of books. And one of those books happens to have the exact 3 slashes in the book called the Hobo Code. And that exactly tells you what it means. Like, it's danger, run away. And by the way, I would have rather have been a bookstore because then you at least have a reason for the book to be there. This is like literally a junk store. Like, they find like license plates and T-shirts. It's just a knickknack store. But in the like 4 books they have in this story, there's one that gives Maddie the answers she needs.
Yeah, and that just keeps happening through this movie. And and then so here's the thing. Okay, so she finds the book in the random store, but I'm like, okay, they are on the road, and you and I've driven millions of miles at this point in our lives. You do stop off at these trinket stores, and they have road adjacent books in there, and it makes sense. And you go, okay, I get it. But then, as if I didn't already see that, then they have to sit down and have a conversation about what I just saw in the book. And this comes out to maybe a bigger problem in the streaming universe. This felt to me, this movie continually is reiterating the rules, re-explaining them. I saw her get the book. I understand what she's learning in the book. She's not talking to anybody. You're seeing pictures. She's flipping through them. I understand. Okay, she learns the hobo code. 3 slashes means danger. Circle arrow means safe to camp or whatever, like et cetera, et cetera. I'm picking up the information. I got it. But then the next scene is like her and Tyler sitting at a table and she's re-explaining everything we just saw. This is a problem and it's growing in this in the film business. And I call it the Netflix protocol because as everybody knows, Netflix says you need to continually reiterate the plot in these movies every 10 or 15 minutes because people are watching on their phones. That's what this movie's doing. It's blatantly doing it. It's doing it in a very bad way because I just saw it. I don't need you to re-explain it to me, but they re-explain it to you. And I just go, we just did it. I'm sitting here watching it. You don't need to explain something to me that just happened, but they do it anyway. And this happens again and again. They bump into Diana again. She explains.
They don't bump into
Diana. Or they don't bump into her, but
so here's another convenience. So when they're at that original van life meetup and she's talking to, what is her name? She's talking to Diane.
Yeah, Diane.
They're talking to Diana. Diane's kind of like, don't drive at night, don't stop for anyone, whatever, all that kind of warning or whatever. But in the middle of this, she conveniently tells her, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Flagstaff to work at my friend's seafood restaurant for a little while." I mean, to that point. Now, I'm not saying strangers don't share information with each other, but like they just kind of like she's warning her about like, don't do this, don't do that. Here's like a real stern warning about someone who's lived on the road. Oh, and by the way, I happen to be going to Flagstaff, and like it was just a weird like transition of conversation where she's like, "So where are you headed?" I'm like, "Why are we talking? Like what?" And so when the weird shit ratchets up and they, even the boyfriend starts realizing like his girlfriend's not cuckoo, like, he starts seeing shit, weird shit keeps happening. They get attacked and just over and over again. And she's like, we gotta find Diana. She'll know what to do. Now, when we meet Diana, she says kind of weird stuff about don't drive at night, which, like I said, if you're on a road trip, that's kind of impossible. You're never going to get where you're going. You're going to be driving very short distances. And don't stop for anyone. Just, like, really not even specific to the problem they're dealing with. Like, she doesn't get deep in the woods when meeting Maddie. Like, she just kind of gives her like general rules of the road in a way. But because that meeting, Maddie's convinced that Diana has the answers. So either make Diana give her part of the answer earlier in the film so you have a reason to trust her or want to seek her out. Because when she's like, we got to find Diana. What did Diana tell you that, like, just a normal traveler probably wouldn't do? Like, don't go to the bathroom. Well, yeah. Like,
but in that original meetup, she looks at the symbol and Diana's like, you know about this? And she's like, then she lays the rules on her. Again,
a warning.
Again. Yeah. But again, like, at least if it was contained in that little convenient box, I'd be like, fine, I get it. Okay, it makes sense why Diana's telling her all this stuff. And then it's just like, and then the reiteration goes and on and on and on. But like, even like how they find Diana, like how the fuck do they even find her? Like they really just, they just happen upon and this is like more of like an old seasoned vet group of people. Like these aren't even the van life people. They even make fun of the two of them. They're like, oh, get back in your rolling Airbnb. These are like lifers. These are old school people over 60 that are doing this shit. But that's not what bothers me about all that, Damon. What bothers me about all that is that, so let me get this straight, Diana. The rules are don't drive at night, don't stop to help people and shit like that. So why, if Diana knows all this, why the hell is Diana even a road person anymore? If she knows what the passenger is, which is the lore we learn is that there is this thing called the passenger that if you come upon it at night on those empty haunted roads, it can haunt your van. If she knows this, if Diana knows this, why the fuck is she still a van life person? She would have, if I would have found that out my first year out in van life, and I found out somebody got haunted and killed. I go, yeah, I'm done being a van lifer. I'm gonna go live in a house and not do this anymore. It's insane. It works against its own logic. That's a problem.
Well, and then so here, well, I have to complain about how they find Diana because they say
Yeah,
that
please.
she knows that she's going to Flagstaff to work for a seafood restaurant, and she's like, there can't be that many seafood restaurants, so we'll track her down. But then they just forget about that, and they show up at the fucking van commune. There's no fucking seafood restaurant, like, and they said like I called the seafood restaurant, and they said Diana was here, but they never go to they just happen to pop up at the commune where all the van people are living. Okay, whatever. But then they go and no one wants to talk to them. Everyone's like, go back to your Airbnb on wheels, whatever. They're just like kind of dismissive. But then she spots Diane. She's like, Diane, I need your help desperately. And Diana's like, what? And then she, tells them what's happening. And and then suddenly Diana is like the ultimate fountain of information. She's like, well, there's this creature that is supposedly is on the side of the roads and it will attach itself to you and haunt you and disturb you, and then boom, it'll crash your car and kill you. And then if you stop to help, it'll attach itself to you, and so on and so forth. The cycle continues. And we don't know if it's a demon or an entity. We don't know what it is, but it's out there, and so we have to avoid it. And then, oh yeah, and by the way, St. Christopher, the patron saint of travel, like it's weary of that. I know I'm missing details, but that's basically she's like, it's
Sure.
weary of that. And she's like, we heard a story. So it goes even further. She's like, oh, I heard
Yeah.
a story about a trucker who got conveniently attacked by the pastor, and he went to a church in the middle of nowhere that is hard to find, but he went there and the pastor left him alone. So maybe if you can get the pastor inside that church, you can kill it. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, this is what I'm theorizing. And then, like, you got to help us, Dan. You got to help us. She's like, all right, fine. I'll drive you to the church. The church that no one knows where it's at. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a St. Christopher's church. I never heard of it. I never heard, but I can get you. It's just like it keeps ratcheting up. She knows everything about this fucking entity, but she just, like, keeps, like, well, I don't really know, but here's how I know.
Right.
That's
Right.
literally what
Stay
happens.
away from me, but okay, I'll help you and take you exactly where you need to go. Don't drive at night, but let's get in the car and drive right now. Now, I will give credit right there. She goes, the big rule is don't drive at night. And then Diana says, fine, I'll take you. It's the middle of the night. She gets in her car, and immediately the passenger is in her car and rips her head off. And I'm like, okay, well, at least she got her comeuppance for breaking the rule, at least. But then more conveniences arise, right? Like now they got it. Now it's undeniable. They just watch the passenger rip her head off. So they run out into the night searching for that church. They're going to find it in the middle of Arizona. Big state, by the way. Big state.
And
And
by
she's
the way, and Diana says there was a trucker who found a St. Christopher's church and it kept him safe from the passenger. She didn't say where. She didn't say like, oh, it's in fucking Ohio or Kentucky. She's just like, it's a church in the middle of nowhere. And she's like, great, we need to know where it is. I don't really know. Well, I'll take you. So apparently they just happen to be in the spot that's like within like an hour's distance of this fucking mysterious church. So once again, this goes against the logic of Diana. Like, if you so you're going to live by the rules and not travel in the night, not stopping, so you're avoiding the pastor that way. But you're going to live in the fucking neighborhood where he clearly hangs out because fucking the church is right there. I mean, it's just logic just goes flying out the window, Patrick.
and then and so they're on the run because holy shit, now finally, by the way, it's ripping heads off because there's actually no true sense of urgency other than I'm scared. That was the first time where you're like, oh, I actually have to get away from this thing because it just ripped Diana's head off. And she's like, we'll just go down every single back road until we find it. Arizona is a giant desert. That's the entire thing is a desert. You know how many back roads are in a desert? I mean, there's one every 10 feet. The very first back road, Damon. Like the very,
And
and now I will say this, it's because conveniently she sees a symbol that she saw from the book, which I don't hate that because it was set up, and it's like, okay, I learned in the book this is a safe trail to go down. It must be that one,
and that's
which okay, fine, it's convenient.
And Diana does say like if you know the codes, that kind of thing. So like she does
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
set it up
I'll
for that
forgive
part there.
it, but
Yeah.
it was like they just drive down the road and it's right there. I mean, it's that
Yeah.
convenient. They don't get lost once. There's no challenge once, and they get down that road, and then they have their big great showdown with the passenger. And I'm being facetious. It's not a big great showdown. It's kind of weird, honestly. And you
Well,
hear me and Damon going on and on and on about all this and explaining a lot of this movie to you. This is why I'm telling you, you don't want to know this much about the lore of anything. It's way better when you know less. It just is. It's almost
well,
always been. Think about Alien for a second, the original Alien. As a movie, it's terrifying. You don't know where that alien came from. You don't understand what's going on that planet. And the more and more you learn about the alien throughout the movies, the less scary it gets. I still love those movies. They're still really well made, they're really well written. But the scare, the fear, the terror of it does go away. And they don't become scary movies anymore. They become kind of sci-fi adventures, which is fine. But the more you know about something, the less scary it gets.
well, let's also not forget. So they go through this whole thing with Diana, and Diana explains what she thinks is the passenger, and then she remembers that when the passenger attacks her in the back of their van when they're getting ready to sleep like a 24-hour fitness, she touches it with the St. Christopher medal, and it burns and it
Oh,
runs
Maddie.
away.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
You
Maddie.
said Diana. Yeah.
No, I said, well, Diana's like telling her all this, but Maddie
Right.
remembers that she burned it with the St. Christopher medal. And so she decides to do some research on St. Christopher, the patron saint of travelers. Conveniently, she finds a story where St. Christopher was a wanderer on the road and he had a companion. And you find out that the companion, the nomad that traveled alongside him, was actually a demon dressing itself as a preacher to fool him. And they now determined that that creepy nomad that used to travel with St. Christopher is the passenger. So they go from here's this creepy
Again, yet
yeah,
another thing I don't need to know
yeah,
that is making it less scary. Yeah.
one or the other. Either it's a creepy entity that just happens to be on the side of the road. And obviously, you're saying it's St. Christopher. It goes to St. Christopher Church to protect you. Clearly, it's a demon or some kind of demonic entity. But then they have to take it a step further and really tell you what it is, which is the weird traveler that used to be alongside St. Christopher, and he vanquished the demon, and now it's tortured on Earth, and it just continuously tortures and kills people on Earth. But once again, they just find the research online. Like, oh, it's just there. Like, it's of course that story's right there. Why wouldn't you find it online? It's just one on top of the other. And so let's talk about this grand ending because they're on the side of the road. They have a tire blowout. I'm not going to get into all that. Long story short, they get on the road. They follow the signs. They're on their way to the church. And the passenger is putting all kinds of obstacles in the road. They put a huge field of dead bodies, making them think they're not dead. And they're like, this is all an illusion. It's trying to fool us, trying to keep us away. So they drive over all the dead bodies and they get to the church. It's an old, broken down, beat up church, but it's the Church of St. Christopher. And here comes the passenger, and it rips Ty out of the van, and here's poor Maddie's left alone. And long story short, it comes after her, in the front of the car. She runs through the church and runs into the giant statue of St. Christopher. And it burns the passenger. It burns because, he's a religious thing. It's a religious thing. He's burned from the statue. And she backs up the car. She runs it in again. Backs it up again, runs it in again. She's trying to kill the passenger. And we learned early on in the movie that she was a foster child. When she was growing up, her comfort show was watching The Art of Painting with Bob Ross. Now, nothing wrong with that. I love Bob Ross. And she has a little bobblehead that her boyfriend got her when they got the van, a little reminder of her, like the good moments of her childhood, because clearly she didn't have a great childhood. And she remembers early in the movie, it's never a mistake. It's a happy accident. That was always Bob Ross's thing. And
Right.
so she's running into the statue, and finally the statue crashes down, and St. Christopher's holding a baby in one hand and a giant spear in the other. And the spear is now pointed out instead of pointed up because, she ran into it. And she goes, only happy accidents. and she runs the fucking passenger forward and runs it into the spear, and the spear goes through the passenger and kills the passenger, and it melts and dies, and then she's reunited with Tyler, and they escape, and they live because they found the Church of St. Christopher Patrick, and they were able to kill it. There are no mistakes. There are only happy accidents.
Yeah, there should have been a head-on collision, I would say. That would have been much more interesting for happy accidents. Look, I think this movie will work for a lot of people. I actually do. Because it is kind of just a straight horror movie. Like it's not trying to be more than anything other than that. It's kind of going with like what is it? What do you call it? Like a urban legend, really, where it's like, oh, there's a passenger on the road, and if you stop on a road at a dark night, a passenger will get you. That's about all you should be saying. They say too much. They get to For all my people who are like, I want to know more about this lore, I want to dive deeper into it. You go dive deep into it. Once you ask the filmmakers or the storytellers or the writers to get deeper into the lore, all of a sudden the lore gets exhaustive, overwhelming, contradictory. It can't keep up with itself. If you're adding so much to it, so many different things that have so many elements that have to happen, so many little rules you have to remember and repeat and then not listen to. So now you have characters that are making dumb decisions because they're not listening to their own rules. Sometimes in this movie, they do the right thing. Sometimes they're like, yeah, let's get the fuck out of here. And they get the fuck out of here. And then something happens on the way that gets in the way of that. That part's fine. But when you get so much explanation, so much lore, not only does it take away from the energy of a movie, it ruins the dread. It pulls the dread right out. If I know everything, what am I scared of exactly?
Well, and like when we talk about the Diana character, when she gives them the lore, when they show up to that, the van commune, I would have almost rather Diane be like, well, here's a story I heard. I don't know if it's true, but here's what I heard. There's a demon that haunts the side of the road, and if you stop, it will basically attach itself to you, and then when you crash and die, it will attach itself to the next person. And I heard a story when I was a little girl, or when I first went into van life, somebody told me this story that it was a demon that was like the opposite of Saint Christopher. He's the traveler who protects, patron saint of protecting travelers. This demon is like the other entity; it kills travelers. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I was told when I first got on the van. Like maybe they're just trying to scare me so I wouldn't be out here alone at night or whatever. But that's what I heard. So be careful. That's all I needed. I didn't need everything else to be explained to me, and I certainly didn't need her literally going on the internet and finding the exact story that told her what the passenger was. And then, I mean, the church is like, once again, like very convoluted, dumb idea. Like, yeah, there's a church in the middle of nowhere. You just happen to find it in the middle of nowhere in Arizona in the one spot where you're at. And then you drive it into the church and that's what kills it. Like, come on, like give me one or the other. Like either it's because obviously, like in a like just like let's say Jeepers Creepers, like you're setting up a potential franchise with a villain, with a bad guy, with a creepy supernatural villain. You're not going to kill it because you're setting up for potential sequels or whatever, but giving us such convenient way to not only stop it but then to kill it by driving it to this random church. I mean, if it gets scarred or burned or whatever by it says like as soon as they get to Holy Land, the thing kind of freaks out. Why do they have to go to the St. Christopher Church? Like, wouldn't that be any church? Like, wouldn't like any Catholic church where like there's holy water and shit? Like, wouldn't they be able to burn it with that? Like, they have to go to this one specific church in the middle of Arizona.
That's what happens when you know too much information. That's what happens.
If you're the passenger, wouldn't you get the fuck out of Arizona? Wouldn't you go to the other side of the world where the fucking St. Christopher Church isn't at? I'm just
go to a non-Catholic, go to a non-Christian country. It'll be easier.
Yeah, go hang out in fucking China or whatever. There's not that many Christians over there. You're gonna be good.
That's my point, though, is that when you start to expand lore, now you can poke holes in it.
Yeah,
you can't. I can't poke holes in the one Wish Willow. I don't know shit about it. I don't know anything about it. I can't poke holes in the lore in Hokum because I don't know about it. I know like the tiniest thing, like, and both those movies have that in common. Hokum and Obsession, they give you one nugget of lore, one, and the movie runs with that. And then you never get into the why. This movie's what happens when you get into the why. You're just like, well, if that's the case, why the hell is the passenger anywhere near churches? He'd run the other way. If you're going towards a church, he'd go the other way. He wouldn't be like, I'll find as many ways to stop you from going into the church. It's like, oh, the church is in sight. I'll hang back here until I find a way to get you, but I'm not going that way. It wouldn't make any sense. It's,
Yeah.
you don't want as much lore as you think you do. Passengers is proof of that.
This feels like is we were talking when we talked about the compliments we paid to Talk to Me when that came out a few years ago. We said it was a unique, different approach on the possession story, and I've seen a lot of possession movies, and I've actually openly admitted, even though I'm not a religious guy, I've said I do enjoy a good possession movie when you do it right, But the problem is the vast majority just immediately fall back into the possession. Here comes a priest to exorcise the demon, and that's how we save the day. So many versions of that, and the Exorcist did it right. Stop trying to do it because you're just doing the same movie and it's not as good. You're not going to pull it off over and over again. That's why I said, like, I've seen a lot. That's why I said, Talk to Me showed us a possession movie that had nothing to do with religion. I was like, oh my God, like what a creative, unique way into that world because I like those stories, but 95% of the stories are all the same. Demon possesses a child or somebody, and here comes a priest to exorcise the demon and say, they just roll out a bad exorcist movie that's not as good. It kind of felt like this. So, like, we have to tie it to religion. We have to tie it to St. Christopher. We have to tie it to a church. If you eliminate all that and just, like, it could still be a supernatural creature. It doesn't mean you can't, like, drive it into a tree and trap it and kill it or something. Like, I don't know what the rules are. You don't have to make rules for it. But, like, doesn't mean you can't kill it. They go so deep in the woods late, and by the way, late in the movie, very late in the movie about the whole St. Christopher thing. Like, they don't get that to, like, literally, like, 20 minutes for the end. If you introduce that earlier, and that's the mythology we know all the way through, fine. They literally tell you the actual origin of the passenger like 20 minutes to go, and it's because she looked up the story on the internet. Like, that's how far down the woods we had to go here to get to that point. I'm just like, either less is more, or give us that mythology right kind of up front so we understand what we're dealing with here, and then it just escalates. Like, I can't remember what movie it is. There's a movie where like they find out the bad guy is Judas, like Judas Iscariot, the guy who turned on Jesus. I can't remember what movie it was, but like you meet the character, by the end they reveal that it's Judas. And I'm like, all right, I don't remember if it's a good movie. I just remember that reveal. Like, okay, I get that. Like you teased it all movie long that it's some religious figure, and then boom, you find out at the end it's Judas. That's fine, but they literally find out about the St. Christopher connection with 20 minutes left to go, and it's just conveniently that they're right there next, like within an hour's drive of the fucking church. It just, the story goes. That's why I said it would have been. The scares in this movie were not bad. There were some pretty good effective jump scares, some pretty good scenes of that. But I don't need to know this much detail, and I really don't need to know it conveniently right at the end of the movie so you can stop the demon and kill it. It just. It was almost like I said, it felt like they didn't know where to go. And they're like, you know what? Let's make this religious and let's make it about St. Christopher because he's the patron saint of traveling. And let's make it about his nomad buddy who's actually a demon. It's too much, Patrick. It's way too much.
There's nothing less dreadful than having your character in your movie look something up on the internet. I'm telling you right now, if you're writing a horror film and you have a scene where somebody has to look stuff up on the internet, you refigure the thing out. There's nothing scary about that. Unless your movie's like internet based, like something about like some lore inside the internet, that could be interesting. If you were like, how do I explain this? What if they look it up on the internet? If you're going with that, go in another direction. It's not entertaining. It's not dreadful. It's boring, and you bore the audience, and it's not scary. So don't do it. I promise you, don't do those things. If you've got to look it up on the internet, it's not scary in your movie. It just won't be.
There's one example. I'm not trying to contradict this. I'm just saying there's one example, but it's because they built the lore so good that when you get to the internet part, it's a TV show, The Outsider. There's a scene in that where the lead character, played by Cynthia Erivo, looks up, like she's trying to figure out what this thing is, and she finds information on the internet. But it actually is scary because the way they film it and the way they built this creature up in the beginning of the story. But you're like 4 episodes deep by this point.
I was going to say that's also TV shows have like hours and hours of work to do.
But-
If you're in a 90-minute movie, there's no time to look anything up on the internet.
and that's
it's
why I
not
said,
it's not
like-
going to be entertaining.
And that's why I said, like, let Diana, if you're going to make her be the half man and she conveniently knows it, just make her know everything. Don't make it to the point where, like, they literally, she tells them just enough and then they go on the internet to figure out the rest. So, like, why not just have her know the information? They've already had to know a lot of other shit.
No, Damon. No, how about this? How about less information? More information has not helped this movie. That's the problem. It's just it's all over this movie. And it's like I needed way less. I needed to be way more scared. I needed more time with the passenger and more time in the shoes of these two characters, Maddie and Tyler, going, I don't understand what's happening. I'm terrified and I don't know how to fix it. That's scary. This is not scary. Books and books worth of fucking information is not scary.
Have you seen The Hitcher, the original Hitcher with Rutger
Yes,
Hauer?
I have.
And,
and the remake. I've seen them both.
Let's not talk about the remake. The premise is basically a kid is driving along, and it's, I can't remember why am I forgetting his name, but he's a pretty well-known 80s actor. He's driving along, and he makes the mistake of picking up a hitchhiker. The hitchhiker's played by Rutger Hauer, and he's clearly a psycho, and he like basically kidnaps this kid, holds him at gunpoint, and he eventually gets away from him. And the rest of the movie is him, like, everywhere he goes, this fucking guy finds him, and he's, like, running from this guy the entire movie, and police aren't helping him because, like, he can't find proof against this guy. They end up arresting him. The guy is just like a total psychopath, and the guy's just stalking this kid throughout the movie. It's a very, very good, effective movie, and it actually is legitimately scary, a little terrifying, because back in the 80s, like, people picked up hitchhikers. It was like a real story. I love that movie. It's simple, and you don't really learn a whole lot about Rutger Hauer's character. You just know he's a fucking psychopath on the side of the road, basically looking for, like, he's hitching rides and killing people. I don't really need to know more than that. It's a scary character. That's what this could have been. A supernatural hitcher. You're not picking him up because he's a fucking creepy ass looking, demon thing, but, like, I don't need to know more than that. I never needed to know more about Rutger Hauer. I just want to know he's scary as shit, and you need to get the fuck away from him. And he's going to terrify you. He's going to haunt you. He's going to come after you. I don't need to know more than that. And they just went so far down the road with the mythology. And like I said, when it got to the St. Christopher demon stuff, I was like, oh my God. I was like, do we really just end this now? Like, just be done with this now, because I can't take much more of this.
Speaking of being done with this now, should we get to categories?
Yeah, let's get to categories, Patrick. Let's kick things off as we do each and every week. There's like 4 people in this movie, so it's kind of easy, or I guess maybe harder, to do a best performance. But yeah, Patrick, when it comes to Passenger, who gets your best performance?
Damon, my best performance goes to Lou Yobel as Maddie, because she's just the main focus of the movie, and she's doing her damnedest to make it work. Hats off to her, for just giving it her best.
Yeah, sure. I'll go with that too. I don't really have a lot to say. I mean, there's not, like, I'm not saying the performances are bad. I'm not saying, like,
yeah, it's almost never the actor's fault. It's almost always the script that is creating the thing that you don't like.
And to their credit, like, because towards the end of the movie, like, they make it like she finally tells her boyfriend Tyler, she's like, I don't want to be out here anymore. Like, I'm not into this. I need to go home and get back in the apartment and have a fucking hot shower. And of course, he's broken hearted because he proposed to her and she said yes. But even that, like, they don't make Tyler like the asshole boyfriend. Like, they're not making him like the dickhead boyfriend, which is kind of refreshing, because you're usually used to that, where, like, one, he's a domineering asshole and she's kind of like, mousy or whatever. Like, that's not, like, he's not a bad guy. He's not, he convinced her to go in the van, but it's not like she's going against her will. Like, she went with him and she just doesn't like it and doesn't want to tell him about it.
And when she starts talking about this shit, he's like, hey, I believe you. Like, it's okay. Yeah. Like, you're afraid and upset about something. Okay, let's figure that out. Like, he doesn't go, you're seeing things, and you're just like, he doesn't become a shitty boyfriend, which, boy, that's a trope of that dragged all the way into the 2000s.
Yeah, which, by the way, like, if you wanted to give us more to do in this movie, like, it would have been like 4 of them in the van, because only 2 of them, you only have so many choices to go with here, you know what I mean? You can't make them hate each other, because they're literally the only 2 people in the van. If you had them with their 2 friends, the friends could be assholes, but not them. So, yeah, I mean, that would have just been like an extra, layer you could add on here, but In
And
this
more
case, they
bodies to
don't.
pick off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's literally like 2 deaths in this movie, or 3, I guess technically. But yeah, there's not a lot of killing in a horror movie. But you don't need a lot of killing. But this one, you're like, it's a supernatural entity that hunts people down the road, and we had 3 deaths. All right. Anyways, yeah, I'll go with that too. I mean, I think she's fine. Nothing wrong with the performance. It's just this is just such a forgettable movie. It's hard for me to like really grade it. And there's like 2 people in it. So, anyways, Patrick, let's get to the next category. Let's go with our MVP. So when it comes to passenger, who gets your MVP?
My MVP goes to Joseph Lloyd Lopez, who plays the passenger. Damon, I don't know if you know this or not. Joseph Lloyd Lopez is a buddy of mine. Okay. He was in the film Don't Do It. He closes out my short film Don't Do It with a phenomenal performance. Joe's actually a really good actor. Joe gets to play the passenger in this movie. And I don't really have notes there. The idea for what like the passenger is fine. And it sort of reminds me of something. I'm not comparing it directly to this, but it kind of reminds me of Valak, the nun. There's a scary idea there, and the script is not servicing the scary idea. That's how I feel about Joe as the passenger. I'm like, that's a scary idea that I'm driving down a dark road, and if I get caught by this guy, I can get caught in this endless loop, and he can haunt me and travel and go with me anywhere I go. I can't escape him if he gets his claws on me. I like that. The script gets in the way of that. But Joe, as the passenger, does nothing wrong. He's scary, and there's a lot of great jump scares you can attribute to Joe and what he did in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea you knew him, so good for you. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I didn't have a problem. I actually liked the idea and I liked the
Yeah.
character. They just didn't do anything right with it. So my MVP is going to be controversial, and probably a lot of people are going to hate me saying this, but I'm going to say it because this is like the least liked company on earth right now. But my MVP goes to Paramount.
You tell.
Paramount produced this movie, and Paramount. I follow Paramount. They have a Instagram account called Paramount Scares. They promote and buy and make a lot of horror films. They're not all good. I'm not gonna tell you they are, but for whoever's making the decision, I know David Ellison's like the CEO. I'm sure he's not totally making all the green light calls on what films get made and what films don't get made, but they invest a lot in horror. Paramount Plus has had a lot of original horror films, some good, some bad, but they do invest a lot in horror. Now, I know, a lot of studios do, but I remember when, like, even when Warner Brothers bought Sinners, they're like, wow, that's a rarity, like, going, because they have New Line Cinema, and they made, like, a horror movie, but they didn't have, like, that big, big blockbuster horror movie. And even that, like, they're like, and they had to give Ryan Coogler, like, final cut, and he gets ownership of the film, things that you don't normally get when you're making a movie. Like it or love it, hate it, but Paramount produces a lot of horror films. And, listen, we were doing a meeting at my day job the other day, and they were talking about, like, man, there's so many horror films that come out now. And I was like, that's because horror films are one of the rare movies that you can make for a lower budget, and it ends up turning a profit. You can't do, like, if you fuck up on one movie that's got $100 million budget and you don't make that money back, you've lost $80 million. You put a $14 million, $13 million horror film that makes $20 million. You're making a tiny bit of profit, but you're also not losing $80 million. So, right. Like when they talk about Obsession, it would cost $750,000 to produce. Now we know it costs more with all the advertising and things like that, but $17 million on opening weekend. They're like, damn. No, it's not gonna do what Avengers Doomsday is gonna do. It's not gonna do that. It's not gonna do what Spider-Man is gonna do. But if you spend, let's just say $1 million, they've already made 17 times that in one weekend. It's going to end up making way more than that. But even if it made 10 million, you're still making it. Like, I remember Terrifier 2 when it came out. It made like 11 million or whatever it was on it, but on a $250,000 budget.
Yeah.
So Paramount, like them or not, and yes, they're making the Top Guns, they're making the big blockbusters, all those kind of things, Mission Impossibles, whatever. But they're still investing a lot of their revenue, a lot of their advertising, a lot of their money into horror films, and because they produce Smile 2, like they've done a lot of that, and credit to them. Like, I'm not telling you everything they do is right or wrong. I'm certainly not sitting there praising some of the shit they pull on behind the scenes and trying to merge with Warner Brothers, but they've been committed to horror and they've continued to do that. Like, that's not really wavered. And listen, I'm not telling you Passenger is a good movie, but who knows? Like maybe the writers behind this, and we know Andre Overdall's capable of
Yeah.
making a really. I mean, Autopsy of Jane Doe is incredible. That's a great horror movie. Maybe because he makes this, he's gonna get his next job, and it's gonna be a great horror movie. Maybe the writers, like maybe somebody sees something in these writers. Yeah, they didn't nail it with this movie, but let's give it another chance. Maybe they do something great. But you don't get that publicity, you don't get that ability unless you make this movie. So I'm giving it to Paramount. Like, I'm not saying this is a good movie, but they made it and they put it in the theaters. This could have easily just gone to Paramount Plus. They could have been, you're going to stream it. They put it in the theaters. So, like it or not, you can hate them all you want. I'm not telling you shouldn't, but we're getting this. We're getting the movie like this in theaters because Paramount's behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I think like every studio is now on the horror bandwagon because they're realizing that nothing else is making any money. Like it's just not. Aside from the giant blockbusters, which they can't shoot 300 of those a year. But Paramount Plus has been doing it, or Paramount has been doing it longer than a lot of studios. Paramount and Universal are the big ones. Universal's also been investing in horror in a serious way, long before it became the hottest commodity through the 2020s. They had Blumhouse and all that stuff, so they've been busy with it. But Paramount was another studio that was like, yeah, we stick by horror. We're a big studio who's going to put horror out there.
Yeah, and like I said, New Line is very famous, but even that, like, that kind of went away. Like, not everyone sticks around. Like, immediately they may do a couple of times. It's like, all right, we're getting out of this. Like Paramount, Universal, they've been around. They've stuck around. They're not giving up on horror. A lot of people did for a while, and then the pandemic hit, and they're like, oh my god, people only want to see horror movies. They're willing to pay to see horror movies. Paramount, Universal, a couple other people, but like they're just like, we're just gonna stick
Yeah,
in the horror.
everyone's on it now, but yeah,
Yeah.
Paramount and Universal were some of the early adopters.
So credit to them, like I said, and like I said, if this was Netflix, they would just gone straight to streaming. We wouldn't get theater out of this. So it's something. It's something. Patrick, next category. Let's talk about best gore. So when it comes to Passenger, what gets your best gore?
I realized I put all my gore up here, but there's one that's like particularly gory, and that's when the passenger finally gets a hold of Diana when she breaks her golden rule of traveling at night, and she gets her head ripped off. And I kind of like what they did there too. He's in the back seat, right? Like perfect urban legend thing. He's in the back seat. He grabs her head and he just starts to stretch it across the headrest of her seat, and you just see her neck just rip wide open and blood spray everywhere and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, that's pretty hardcore. That'll work.
It was like the one hardcore scene, honestly, really.
Yeah, I think it is the one hardcore scene.
The one that got me just because it was so close up and just kind of nasty. There's a moment where Tyler and Maddie get a flat tire and they pull over in the side of the road and he has to change the tire. And while he has the nuts and bolts, they all get scattered. The passenger like scatters them under the car. And he's trying to pick out the things. And as he's doing this, mysteriously the jack gets lowered and he gets stuck under the car. And while he's trying to get himself out, he basically gets his leg trapped and he has to pull his leg out from under the car. And his jeans are up and the bottom just scrapes the skin off his shin. And they do a really good job with the close up. It's pretty gross. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like that great scene from Boy Behind the Door where you see the really close up shot of the toenail getting ripped off. It's like just that skin getting ripped off the shin. It's pretty pretty gnarly, and it's like. And by the way, I've had shin injuries before. It fucking sucks, man. So it's
Fuck,
got a little bit
hurt on the shin.
a little bit of like I've kind of seen that up front and like really know what it feels like. So yeah, it's not fun. So it was a good scene.
Oh yeah, that's another cringe-inducing scene in the good way, where you're just like, oh shit, that sucks.
Yeah, Patrick. Next category: best scare. Now, effectively, like I said, there are some pretty decent jump scares. I saw Chuck's review and he talked about like there's some pretty good jump scares. I will admit there are some pretty good jump scares in this.
This might be the strongest element of the entire movie is Overdahl's ability to set up scares. He creates a great anticipatory dread as the scares are moving up to you. My favorite in particular was when Maddie is in the gym parking lot and she's kind of freaking out because the lights in the parking lot are flickering, and then as she's approaching the van, she'll turn away because she thinks there's somebody behind her. She looks back, and then the van's far away. It's kind of this great building up of tension. And then as she's noticing these guys who she thinks might be following her, she's looking back at them, and then just out of nowhere, a fucking garbage truck nearly flattens her. And that, like I really didn't see it coming. And why would you? You would hear, like they very clearly designed it so you can't hear a garbage truck like driving around the lot. There's no warning to it. So when it just hits like a fucking Mack truck, quite literally, like you're like, oh my God. Like I mean, it's the one scare that truly got me in this movie. But a lot of the scares in this movie were very properly set up.
I'm gonna go back to the trailer, the opening scene, and I know it's like, well, you've already seen it, but it worked really, really well. Is like that last closing second of the trailer, which, like I said, is literally the cold open to this movie. When the guy's driving away from his friend, he's lost his friend's dead. He's driving away trying to get away, and he keeps seeing this weird passenger on the side of the road, and then boom, out of nowhere, it's right there in his face in the car. It's in the trailer. I understand that. So even if you've not seen this movie, you know what that's like. But that was just a really good one. Like I was like, man. And by the way, like really, that has nothing to do with the movie. If I'm being honest, like that Daniel or the guy is the one who crashes the car, and then the passenger leaves him and attaches itself to Tyler and Maddie. But really, that's not like, inconsequential. It's just like I said, it would have been a really cool like that opening scene would have been a really cool short film. But that scene where you just keep seeing this weird creature on the side of the road, this weird person standing there, boom, it's in the car right in his face. It's a good scare. It's a good jump scare.
It is. There's quite a few good scares in this movie. It needed a better story.
Yeah, it had elements. It just didn't have kind of what you really need for a good horror movie.
Yeah.
Patrick, next category: remake, sequel, or leave it alone. Pretty self-explanatory, but this is where we take whatever movie we're reviewing and we say, should you remake it, should you sequelize it, or should you leave it alone? So when it comes to Passenger, remake, sequel, or leave it alone?
Damon, I'm going to go with a remake. I think there's potential for an actually really scary story here. It just the problems with the script is that the script is dying to tell you everything, dying to shine floodlights on all the scary parts and corners of this thing. It needs to be more mysterious. It needs to be scarier. We need way more time with the passenger. And like you said, like put some more people in the damn van. Start picking people off. Put some stakes in there, something that makes there be a sense of urgency where you're like, oh shit, figure this out quick, and we don't have time to go on the internet, we don't have time to talk it to death, we don't have time to explain it to everybody. Just fucking run from this scary thing on the road. The environment itself is interesting. The passenger himself is dreadful. Use those things to your advantage and stop shining a light on all the extra extraneous details that do not need to be there.
The reason my first instinct was remake it because like there's a couple elements of this movie that do work, and I'd be like, you could make a good movie here, you really could, but they just we've talked nonstop about what went wrong. But I'm gonna say leave it alone because it just didn't work, and you did over explain it. And if you remake it and you just tell us it's they call it the passenger again or whatever, passenger again, you're gonna have that. If you've seen it, you're gonna be like, oh, I kind of know what I'm getting into. And even if you switch it all up and you change it all up, you're gonna be like, yeah, I've seen this before. And you're gonna have that idea in your head. You already know what's coming because it's a remake. And I think about like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. When you put 7 or 8 kids in a van, you have a body count there. Like you talked about, give us a reason, give us a higher body count, give us a reason to run, which I mentioned earlier, Jeepers Creepers. Shitty director, but it's just on the run from this creature. That's all you needed here. So I'm going to say leave it alone and just tell whoever makes another road trip nightmare, make it better. Just make it a better, like I like the idea of a road trip nightmare because I've gone on a lot of road trips for myself. One of the scariest experiences of my life was getting off an exit in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is a big town. It's not a big town. Here's the secret. I got up the highway. There was one gas station. I had to get gas. I stopped for the gas station, and there were like just random cars like parked. One had its lights on. You go inside. They're selling boiled peanuts, which is still bizarrely weird to me. And there's one guy working there, and I'm pretty sure his name was like Bocephus or something. And it was it was literally like, it was straight out of a horror movie. Everything was dark. Nothing on this road but the one gas station. You've never seen me pump gas, go pay for the gas, and get out quicker in my fucking life. Because I was just waiting for somebody to be like, hey, boy, you sure got a pretty mouth. I was terrified because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and like Little Rock, like you hear Little Rock, you think it's a bigger town. There's like 3 exits. Like it's not a big town. Was scariest experience, and I really had no reason to be scared. Nothing happened, but like it was just creepy as shit. Do something like that. Give me a good road trip scary movie. Like I said, Joyride has that. Joyride's a great scary movie. It's a really good like pulse pumping thriller. This wasn't. So I say leave it alone because I don't really want to see more of this in any fashion.
Fair enough.
Next category, Patrick. Can we survive this horror film? I'm going first here because I think I'm the road trip king here between us. I think I've probably driven more weird places than you have. No offense.
Maybe. I don't know. I've driven in some weird I've driven in other countries too. I don't know if you have.
Well, I haven't done a lot. I've driven in Canada a lot, but I've not driven. Yeah. But I've driven in Texas. I've driven in Arkansas. I've driven in Alabama.
I've driven the whole of New Zealand, and that was one of the scariest drives. One night, I'll just say this real quick. One night, I don't know how this even worked. The fog was so thick, and there's nothing in New Zealand. It's tiny little town, 40 miles of nothing, and then a tiny town for the most part. We're driving in the middle of the night because we have to make our days every single day. It was both the foggiest drive I've ever been in, and it was raining at the same time. I've never experienced that, where I was like, it's foggy and it's raining. And then like it got so thick, we literally were like, we have to stop or we're going to die on this road. We literally can't see in front of ourselves. And we just had to stand there in the middle of nowhere with just darkness in all directions. That's pretty fucking freaky.
Yeah, that happened to me when I was driving. I went to a UFC card in Virginia at George Mason University. And when I drove back, I drove there, like 7-hour drive. I had to drive through Maryland and then go into West Virginia. West Virginia is very much New Zealand times like 10. It's like small town, hill, mountain, small town. Nothing's there. And that night I drove back. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning after the UFC show. And it was the foggiest mountain drive.
Yeah.
And the only saving grace I had was there was a car in front of me. And I followed their taillights for like 100 miles. And then when I finally got to an exit in West Virginia and it started getting a little lighter out, like 5 in the morning, I pulled off to the rest stop and stayed there for like 3 hours until it got light out and the fog kind of dissipated. One of the, most pulse pumping, white knuckled, the fucking wheel the entire way, scariest things. This was like up and down around mountains. I was just waiting to die. I was like, I'm either going to drive right into another car or I'm going to drive off a fucking hillside because like that's how foggy it was. And the only thing that kept me awake, I always credit this, I was listening to Kevin Smith's Smodcast. And I was like,
he's always there for you, isn't he?
It kept me from being too stressed because I was like I was terrified, but you made me laugh. So I was like, I can kind of handle this.
Yeah.
To that point, can we survive this horror film? I say I do. Because I am the master of the road trip. I'm not a fucking moron when it comes to this shit. I'm not saying I recognize the 3 scratches on the side of the road. And I'm not saying I'm an asshole and I leave drivers on the side of the road dead or anything. But like I'm not dumb enough not to recognize the signs I'm in a bad situation. These two really don't see that until it's already too late. Me personally, like I'm just gonna be like, yeah, we need to get the fuck out of here. Like we're not driving to they're like, you can find the answers in Flagstaff. Fuck Flagstaff. I'm going the other fucking direction. I'm going to New York. Give me the fucking Manhattan where there's never darkness ever. It's never dark there. Or go to Vegas when you're on the strip and it's lit up from fucking noon to midnight. There's never an amount of darkness. That's what I would be doing. I would know better than to get stuck in this situation. I would never be a van lifer. It's not for me anyways, but I would just not put myself in these situations. So I know that's a very boring movie. Like they're like, here's a passenger. Like, cool, I'm going to drive the other fucking direction. Well, that's not a very interesting movie, Damon. Yeah, but I live. So yes, I do survive.
And for all the same reasons. I've driven millions of miles. There's no fucking way. If I know an entity is coming, but it comes at night, we're not driving at night. It's not going to happen. It won't be part of the movie.
Yeah, it's like the haunted house. Ghost in the house, get the fuck out of the house. That's pretty much it.
And sure, shit ain't having van life. That's just
yeah.
I never. That's the worst endorsement of van life I've ever seen put to screen.
Yeah, really. I have no interest in it. I didn't have any interest in it before. I definitely don't have interest in it after now.
Yeah, no, it just like literally makes you not want to do van life. Yeah. It's like there's nothing glamorous about it.
Yeah, this is not like a let's go do this. This is not that. No one's going to do that. Patrick, last category, is it scary? So when it comes to Passenger, is it scary?
Now, Damon, you're going to be shocked for me to say yes, it is scary because the scary elements of the movie, the setups and the jump scares, they're all there. I mean, I think if you turn your brain completely off, which you will have to, those things work. There's a little bit of blood and guts and gore here and there. That's the thing. I looked at it and I was like, this is a pretty basic horror movie. Our buddy Justin, I think, said that much too. It's just a basic horror movie. It's just the story actively wants you to hate it. And I'm like, why are you fighting the thing that you got something set up here? You're getting in the way of it. So it is weirdly, I'm going to say it is scary. It doesn't mean that it's not a ringing endorsement of the movie. It's just like, yeah, it's a basic ass horror movie if you want one like that. If you want an early 2000s horror movie, as Damon so astutely put, it's there.
I'm going to agree with you. It is.
There it is.
The jump scares work. This is the mastery of Andre Overdahl. He's the one orchestrating this. Like his actual execution of the scares work really well in this movie. There are legitimate jump scares, even though apparently my theater was on, fucking downers and didn't jump at anything. But I got it. Like I was like, oh yeah, these work. Like there were a couple moments that really worked in there. So yeah. Weirdly, for a movie that I don't really like and probably will never want to revisit, there are enough jump scares in there for me to legitimately say, yeah, it's scary. And by the way, I'm going to close out on this, Patrick. I mentioned kind of at the beginning without giving spoilers. The other absolute necessity of an early 2000s movie that this film has to have, when the movie ends, you hear some guitar. And I recognized it right away. I was like, oh, this is Passenger by Iggy Pop, or The Passenger by Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
But it's a shitty cover song of The Passenger. That is a staple of early 2000. They had, had to have like a Nirvana cover, or a Pearl Jam cover, or a Soundgarden cover, or a Metallica cover, someone doing like the acoustic version of Enter Sandman, or whatever. Without fail, there has to be a cover song of a song you know and love, and it has to be like the acoustic version, or a girl singing a guy song, or a guy singing a girl song.
New metal version of it.
Yeah. This time it was a girl doing a weird, not good version of The Passenger, which is a great song by Iggy Pop. It was that. It was just like, I'm the passenger. I ride and I ride. I'm like, oh, fuck this thing. But that reminds you of early 2000s?
Look at we are in a reality now where early 2000s is 20 years ago. There will now be nostalgia for early 2000s movies. I'm not encouraging that. I'm not encouraging it was look at, they were making horror movies. There's a couple of good ones here and there, but don't start going for that template. We can do better. We're doing better. We're doing better every day. I mean, I think the 2020s are fucking eating. I think they're incredibly well done. Damon, one last thing I want to mention here. My buddy BT Meza has a movie called Affection that is now available for pre-order on Apple TV Plus. If you got or Apple TV or whatever, you can find it if you're looking for a pre-order of Affection and you didn't get a chance to see it in the theaters. You can go to Apple. No one's paying me. Nobody asked me to say that. I know it as a fact, so I'm letting you know. If you want to see Affection, you didn't see it in theaters, pre-order on Apple.
And Passenger is available in theaters right now, so go judge for yourself. Tell us why we are right or wrong. I always love to hear from you guys on that kind of stuff. We appreciate everyone tuning in the show as always. Make sure you check us out on Patreon if you want early access to this episode and all of our episodes. Patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. Check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We have a YouTube channel. Once again, just search Rewind of the Living Dead. You'll find us over there. RewindofTheLivingDead.com, as well as all of our podcasts. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, your thoughts on Passenger. What did you think? Hit us up on social media anytime. We are on Twitter/X, we are on Instagram, and we are on Facebook. Once again, just search Rewind of the Living Dead, and you'll find us over there. You can also send us emails, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That is rotlivingdead@gmail.com. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tunes in the show. We have more horror movies coming. Backrooms is next week. Very buzzy horror films, so we'll talk about that next week. So thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you for the next edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.